coming early in the morning here in the West Coast and also maybe a little bit in the afternoon in the other part of the world. So today is a little bit different from the type of talks and webinars we had before. We have 3 extraordinary panel members. I will introduce the panel members later on, but let me just do this remark first, and then I'll introduce my panel's members, and then we can go from there. So as a shared river by 11 countries, as you know, Nile is one of the oldest and also the most famous river because of its history and contribution, particularly to the successful settlement and development of the lower basin countries. If you look into it hydrologically, it has much smaller flow than the Amazonian, the Congo, and even the Mississippi River. But it's also the most visible and famous river, mainly because of the lower 3 basin countries who are still struggling to define what is the most acceptable, fair, and equitable share is of the common water resource. This became more contentious after the beginning of the Gerd's construction in 2011, as you know. Countries are still to agree on the filling and operation, even though Ethiopia says they have agreed on the staged filling schedule. Egypt and Sudan still refer to the environmental impact and the flooding issue that becomes along with the operation of the dam. Ethiopia says or feels that it's beneficial dam that can provide sustained, regulated, and also safe flow to Sudan and Egypt. And Ethiopia says also it also helps in sediment reduction in addition to the hydroelectric power infrastructure that help to ensure the energy security and independence of Ethiopia and also the neighboring countries. Egypt and Sudan seek for a binding agreement for its operation before filling, mainly to address the issue of drought. Some say, particularly in Ethiopia, water sharing should come first before the binding agreement, and any reference of historical use to maintain the status quo of the water is the major obstacle that's actually happening at this moment. Ethiopia wants to the cooperative framework agreement to be ratified and agree on equitable water sharing of the limited resource. And another disagreement is on the negotiation format and also who will be the mediator. This is now a new challenge that the 3 countries are facing. This is still not settled. Ethiopia wants African Union as the mediator, and Egypt and Sudan want this African Union, European Union, United States as a member of the negotiations. So today's panel is not about the political wrangling and the endless negotiations, but it will be about facts and science that will be the focus of the discussion by our 3 extraordinary panel members. I will introduce the panel members shortly. The discussion and presentation by these 3 panel members do not represent any of the government's position, but it is their personal opinion. I will be moderating this panel discussions along with Drs. Wasanu and Samu, who will also identify questions from the audience through chat and also participate in the Q&A. Now I will introduce my panel members. First, I would like to thank actually our co-organizers. FIU, the Institute of the Environment, is the lead organizer, but also we have the UNESCO Chair on Sustainable Water Security at FIU, is our supporter and collaborator also. Addis Ababa Institute of Technology at Addis Ababa University, Bahar Institute of Technology at Bahar University, Nile Basin Discourse, Water and Land Resource Center at Addis Ababa University. Now we have 3 extraordinary members, as I said, so I'm going to go into their bio briefly. We have Mohammed Basheer, who is a doctoral student at the University of Manchester. And then we have Mekdelawit Messay Deribe, who is also a doctoral student at Florida International University here in the US. And also we have Hisham Eldardiry, who is, I believe, Hisham, you can correct me, that you have graduated a few days ago, who was a PhD student when we planned this, but I believe he has graduated now. So my first panel member is Mohammed Basheer, a doctoral student at the University of Manchester. So Mohammed is a doctoral researcher at the University of Manchester. His doctoral research focused on economics of engineered water systems, focusing on the Nile Basin. He has a Bachelor of Science in Civil Engineering from the University of Khartoum and also an MSc in IWRM from Cologne University of Applied Science. I believe that's in Germany. Mohammed's career involved contributing to water-related research and consultancy projects in a variety of regions around the world, including Northwest East Africa, South Asia, and the Middle East. So we know Mohammed through his work, particularly through his Nile research. Over the past 5 years, Mohammed co-authored and published several scientific papers in international peer-reviewed journals on Nile water management. So I'm going to ask Mohammed to give about 10 minutes remark on the potential opportunity and risk of the GERD, particularly when it comes to Sudan. My next panel member is Mekdelawit Messay, a doctoral student at FIU. So Mekdelawit is a doctoral student at FIU. Her research focused on long-term sustainable and equitable utilization of transboundary water resource with specific interest on the Nile Basin. She has a BSc in Civil and Environmental Engineering from Addis Ababa Institute of Technology. She has also a master's in Environmental Science from Wageningen University in the Netherlands. But also she did another master's before she joins us here as a PhD student in hydraulic engineering from Addis Ababa Institute of Technology in Ethiopia. Mekdelawit is actively involved in the Nile water use discussions, especially as to relates to the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam. Her master's research was mainly on equitable and reasonable use of the Nile water, written several opinion pieces, and contributed in numerous panel discussions on this topic. Besides her academic engagement in the Nile, you might know that Mekdelawit has been very active in social advocacy around the Nile Basin, working to illuminate the multiple stories and narratives across the basin and fostering dialogue with the hope of bringing people together, creating a shared understanding, empathy, and culture of peace in the Nile Basin. So Mekdelawit will be actually talking about today towards a long-term equitable and sustainable use of the Nile River. And then we have the third speaker is Hisham Eldardiry, PhD at the University of Washington in Seattle. I believe he has another PhD also from different university, which I'm going to mention that. He has a PhD in Civil and Environmental Engineering Department at the University of Washington in Seattle. He has also another PhD before the first PhD in Systems Engineering from the University of Louisiana at Lafayette, USA. He has also Master of Science degree in Civil Engineering, again, from the University of Louisiana. He has a BSc degree in Civil Engineering from Alexandria University in Egypt. His research focus is mainly on finding sustainable solutions to the challenges facing the security of energy and water systems in transboundary basins. He is highly interested in the future of the Nile River Basin following the hydropower development by upstream nations, in particularly in, when it comes to GERD. Recently, Hisham has launched a satellite-based decision support system called NIBRAS, or the Nile Basin Reservoir Advisory System, mainly to monitor reservoir operations over the Nile River Basin. The outcomes of Hisham's research will potentially pave the way for sound cooperative agreements that can inspire a win-win deal and consider the equitable rights of development in the Nile Basin. So Hisham will be commenting for about 10 minutes on the future operation of Aswan Dam, challenges and opportunities, particularly taking into account also the GERD operation. I will be the moderator. I'm Safan Melissa and also organizer of this particular forum. I will be assisted by Dr. Swasanoui and Dr. Samu, particularly when it comes to gathering questions from the audience and through chat. We have some upcoming talks. We have another talk by Dr. Imad Hassan, which will be on new insights on the water storage of the Nile River Basin using GRACE and data-driven and modeling. That will be on April 29. We have also the date to be determined by one of our speakers today, Mohammed Basheer, will be giving also a talk in May. We'll come back with the particular title and also on the date. We have also Dr. Alamayo Gabriel, who will be giving also GERD reservoir simulation for various scenario of optimal power generation sometime in June. And then we'll also announce the one coming in July and August. This is a monthly event. Reminders, presentations will be video recorded. I hope you know by now. Please mute your microphone for the duration of the presentation. Also unmute to ask questions after the presentation ended and time for Q&A. You can send chat to the moderator for questions or comments. Okay, now with that, I'm going to invite the first speaker, Mohammed. Mohammed is joining us from Manchester today. He has a teaching assignment in about an hour, so he's really squeezing his time to be part of this panel discussions, which I'm very, very happy to see him. And also even Hisham is joining us from Seattle. It's now almost, I don't know, is that 5 a.m. over there with Hisham? I believe so. So this is really very important for us, for these extraordinary 3 panel members to join us in this time of inconvenience. So Mohammed, I will give you 10 minutes, and then since you are going, depending on the time, maybe we'll go for the Q&A for your part, and then maybe we can join the others later on. I believe, Mohammed, you are a co-host, so you can share your screen. Let me stop sharing my screen.
All right. Do you see my screen now?
Yes, Mohammed.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much, organizers. Thank you, Professor Assefa, for having me here today. So I'm going to take you very quickly through some of the risks and opportunities of GERD to Sudan. And I will divide that into the filling period and the long-term operation. And when I talk about the filling period, I will focus specifically about the second year filling, because there has been a lot of discussion about this this year, the second year filling of GERD and how it would impact Sudan. All right, so some of the known challenges of the Nile is its high variability. The top plot shows the annual variability of the Nile. That's the year-to-year change in the Nile flow from 1900 to 2002. And there you can see very changing flow pattern, but also you can see successions of above normal and below normal years, and an increasing frequency of these changes in successions. The lower plot shows the daily flow of the Blue Nile at a dam gauge, which is located near the Ethiopian-Sudanese border from 1965 to 2090. So just looking at the black line, which shows the median flows, we can see that around 80% of the flow occurs in only 4 months of the year. But we can also see that from this blue band, that the daily flows also take a quite wide range, which also represents a challenge. Now, there are 2 questions that I would like to highlight very quickly, and that are often answered in a wrong way, which results in misinformation and tension. Does the GERD bring risks only? The answer to that is obviously no. The GERD is a development project. It will generate electricity, which will benefit the Ethiopian people, and will also have some positive externalities to Sudan. Does the GERD bring opportunities only? The answer to that is as well no. Almost any intervention in the natural system brings about negative impacts. But the impacts of GERD are not only going to be, environmental impacts, but as well impacts on water users in the downstream. So how do we evaluate a development project in general like GERD? We look at both risks and opportunities and try to see whether opportunities justify risks. Sounds easy so far, right? The issue is, how are these risks and opportunities distributed spatially and temporally? And that's where things become complex, because there are many stakeholders involved, and their impacts might differ. Now, how do we normally evaluate these risks and opportunities, or how do I evaluate that? I have a suite of daily models of the Eastern Nile Basin that expands, that has a baseline expanding from 1983 to 2017, and that includes river system model with water users, water infrastructures, and of course the system operating rules, and also rainfall runoff model to quantify ungauged flows. But there is also a flood inundation model that estimate the flood extent and depth in different scenarios. So based on this modeling framework, one can estimate changes to hydropower, changes to irrigation, changes to municipal water supply, and so on. Now, let's talk a little bit about GERD and its potential impacts on Sudan. So if you look at this map on the top left corner, it shows the Osiris Dam and the GERD and the reservoirs of the 2 dams. And GERD is really, really close to the Osiris Reservoir. It's between 15 and 20 kilometers. And if you are in a good mood and can run very well, you can run this distance in a little bit above 1.5 hours, perhaps 2 hours. So it's a very, very short distance, which indicates how important it is to coordinate the operation of the GERD on the Osiris reservoirs, because any unknown or unexpected releases from GERD could result in disruptions to the operation of the reserve reservoir. Now, from looking at this map, you really wouldn't be able to know the difference in volume, but the storage size of Gerd reserves are quite different. The reserves is only 5.9 BCM, billion cubic meter, and the Gerd is 74. So I came up with these cubes to show the relative volume of the different reservoirs downstream of Gerd. And so simply you can fit over 12 reservoirs of the reserves within the Gerd, which shows how large Gerd is and how little capacity the reserves has to deal with any unexpected releases from Gerd. So what do we know about the filling process of Gerd? So far we know that it's going to happen in 4 stages. The first stage is planned to happen over 2 years. So the first year involves 4.9 BCM. I know that this hasn't been, this volume hasn't been retained last year. I think what has been retained is 3.9. And the second year involved 13.5 BCM. So if we add the 1 BCM that has been missed last year, we'll have 14.5, and that's roughly 3.5 the volume. So this year, the retainment volume is around 3.5 what has been retained last year. And this is more than 2 times the storage capacity of the reserves dam. So what else do we know? We know that the filling is planned to happen in July and August. So that's this red band here. I'm putting it over the plot that I previously showed. But also if you look at the typical operating curve for the reserves dam, you will see that this period of July and August coincides with when the reserve reservoir is at its lowest level. And this is also the case for Merowe and Sinnar Dam. This indicates that there is, during the Gerd filling period, which is July, August, there will not be any storage in Sudan to deal with any high declines in river flows, which could translate into water shortages and declines in hydropower, as I will show you. Now, it's also very important to understand the engineering of Gerd, because that also determines how the filling process is going to happen. Oftentimes, people overlook this very important fact. Any dam in the world or any hydraulic structure that obstructs a natural flow has a certain capacity to release water. This capacity is determined by the set of outlets that are available within that certain structure. The Gerd has different kinds of outlets, as you can see here on this left side. It has river diversion outlets, and these are normally used during the construction period to divert the river to construct certain parts of the dam. But it can also be used after that to pass water downstream. But they have certain limits, and they have certain capacities, and they can use up to certain water levels. And the same applies to other dam outlets. So if you look at the plot on the left side here, this shows the relationship between how much water the Gerd can release at different levels. And you can see that this is not a trivial thing to just think that water can be released at any water level at any time. And this is so important, especially for this second year filling, because the amount of water that we reach downstream during July and August will be largely determined by how much Gerd outlets can release downstream. Now, I tested a few scenarios using the modeling system that I showed you earlier. And these are scenarios for the second year filling based on certain targeted daily releases from Gerd. And of course, that is considered all the engineering constraints that I showed you earlier. These scenarios are all based on a data sharing and transparency setting, because without that, your modeling system, I mean, at least the way I set up the modeling system is that downstream reservoirs will need to know how much water is released from upstream reservoirs. Now, what you see here is so the baseline is a system without Gerd. And then you've got this line here, which shows the system with Gerd, but with the outlets fully open. That means the outlets are used to their maximum capacity. And then you've got other scenarios for targeted daily releases. we can see that there is always going to be a negative impact on Sudan's hydropower during July and August this year. This plot here shows the distribution of hydropower generation. And it shows that with the increase of the targeted daily releases during July and August, the impact on hydropower in Sudan declines. But there's always a deviation from the baseline, even if the outlets are fully open. In terms of water shortages, and these are irrigation and municipal shortages, this can be largely managed through sufficient downstream targeted daily releases during the filling, as this graph shows. So you can only see shortages when the releases are too low, 30 MCM per day. These are the targeted releases. Now, what do these targeted releases mean for Gerd filling? So, this simulation runs over many scenarios. So I run it over, in this case, all the hydrologic conditions from 1983 to 2017, considering that the second year filling is going to happen in any of these years. And then the plot that you saw previously was based on all these hydrologic scenarios. But also, how does that translate in terms of success for Gerd in completing the second year filling? And we can see that the success rate, which is the blue part of these columns, declines with the increase in the targeted daily release. What I want to highlight here, and I think this is very important to note, is even if the gates are fully open, there is over 60% chance that the filling is going to be happening anyway, because the outlet capacity of Gerd would not be able to pass the flood peak and will result in a rise in Gerd water level until the water level reaches the level of the low block spillway, which we're now for the water to come over that spillway. So what is it that Sudan and Ethiopia need to agree on? They need to agree on whether the outlets are going to be fully open during this second year filling, when the river diversion outlets are going to be closed, and what the targeted daily release is going to be, because that determines both the impact on Sudan and the rate of success for Gerd filling. Some of the potential long-term impacts, of course, this is based on a Gerd operating policy that maximizes its firm power. So if Gerd is operating to maximize its firm power, is going to regulate the Blue Nile flow and improve water irrigation, water reliability in Sudan in the long term. But that will also increase hydropower by some 20%. Also, hydrological alterations to the Blue Nile in the long term are going to reduce the riverine flood hazard. It will not eliminate the flood hazard, because there will come time when Gerd is at a very high level, and there is a high flood peak coming in. So there's also a need to discuss the issue of managing flood in addition to managing droughts. Recession agriculture is going to be lost as a result of river flow regulation, and this will also leave negative environmental impacts in the downstream. In conclusion, dams bring both opportunities and risks. Gerd service coordination and consultation is not an option, it is a must. They have to be coordinated, and collaboration increases opportunities and decreases risks. I invite you to read any of my papers that I have published on the Nile and Gerd in recent years, and thank you for your attention.
Okay, thank you very much, Mohammed. We are still about, let me see now. Still trying to, okay. We're still about 27, 28 minutes past the hour. So I don't know, I might invite Mekdelawit maybe to go now for another 10 minutes, and then we can combine the questions, and then maybe Hisham will be later on, since Mohammed has to leave early, he has a teaching assignment. So Mekdelawit, if you can go, that would be great.
Thank you, Professor. Do you guys see my screen?
Yes. Do you want to put it on the, yes.
Okay, thank you very much, everyone. It's a pleasure being here. Congratulations, my other panelists who just graduated. I would be talking about a more holistic view of the Nile Basin. And as my title shows, do you guys still see my screen, the PowerPoint?
It's a little bit twisted. What is it?
Yes.
Can you refresh, maybe?
Okay. How about now?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll be talking about the long-term sustainable use. I'll be talking about the long-term sustainable use of the Nile water, and I want to stress on three things: long-term, sustainable, and equitable use. Now, the GERD is something like a more of a like a hot topic that everybody wants to talk about, but I want to look I want to look at the long-term long-term viability of how we can use the Nile water. I'm sorry, I'm having a bit of trouble sharing with the screen. Professor, may I suggest that maybe Hisham goes next until I fix this?
Yeah, that'll be fine. Yeah. Hisham, you wanna jump in?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Hisham, you're a co-host, so you can share.
Yeah, I see. You can see my screen, right?
Yes, yeah. 10 minutes, Hisham. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, hi everyone, and thanks for joining this panel discussion. I'm Dr. Asifa. Introduce him, I'm Hisham. I just graduated, as Asifa mentioned, for PhD from the Department of Civil Environmental Engineering at University of Washington in Seattle. And I was speaking today about the future operation of Aswan Dam. I know we always concerned about the GERD, but I'm more interested about the operation of Aswan Dam itself and how it can adapt in the future for the challenges introduced by the GERD. And is there any opportunities to adapt the Aswan Dam for these challenges or not? So I just want to mention this disclaimer that any opinions or views that I'm presenting today, just it's my opinions and it's not reflect or represent any stand of any of the Nile countries. So the Aswan Dam is, you all know, it's the most downstream and the largest existing dam in the Nile River, and it's controlling most of the water coming into Egypt. It's mainly operated for hydropower generation and also for meeting the irrigation demand in the downstream, especially for the Nile Delta. It has the Lake Nasser, which is the reservoir of the dam, and its storage volume is about 162 kilometer cube, which is like around, it's probably more than double the GERD, which is here in the Blue Nile. But some of the challenges that I want to highlight it for the operation of Aswan Dam is that it's located, and its operation is actually, since the river is a transboundary, so this is a big challenge for the operation of Aswan Dam. And the map I'm showing here is showing all the 11 countries which are sharing the Nile River. The other challenge is the planned dams in the upstream, and these planned dams are shown here in these red triangles. And one of them, you know, is the GERD, which is currently under construction. These yellow triangles are the dams which are currently under construction. But you can see it's not only the GERD. In the future also, if some of the dams which are planned that will be constructed either in the White Nile or in the Blue Nile, this will challenge more the operation of Aswan Dam. Another challenge is the increase in the population, which will reflect also in an increase in the food and the energy demand. And, you know, a country like Egypt now, it's more than 100 million people. Another challenge is the data availability and sharing in the Nile River or between the Nile nations. And this challenge is actually a two-dimensional challenge. I look at it like a problem of the availability of the data itself, because all the countries in the Nile are developing nations, and we do not have this in situ, a good network of in situ data. And the other dimension is the sharing of the data, because if the data is even available, then the countries in the Nile River are not sharing the data between themselves. The last change is the climate variability, and I think that's very important when we consider the operation of dams, especially when we are interested to know if the next year is a dry year or a wet year, and based on that we decide how to efficiently operate the dams. So this is like, I'm showing you some of the challenges to operate the Aswan dam. But in general, in my work, as I mentioned, one big challenge is the data availability. So what I propose in my work is trying to use a satellite-based framework or blueprint. And this most of my work is based on this framework, which integrates different models, including hydrologic model, reservoir model to simulate the operation of the planned dams like Gerd, or even existing dam like the Aswan dam. And also another model is the ET model, which is, in my case, I'm using CBAL, or surface energy balance algorithm for land. And this model I'm using it to estimate the evapotranspiration, and using this as a proxy of how much water is used for irrigation. But as you can see, all of these components in my framework are using satellite information. So let's move to some of the opportunities that we have to improve the operation of Aswan dam. And the first one I want to mention here is using satellite observation with hydrologic model to understand the operation of Aswan dam. And as I said, the big challenge is sometimes having the data available. And so in this work, I'm trying to show if we can use the available satellite missions to infer the operation of Aswan dam from space. I'm showing here very quickly the result of using different missions like SRTM, Landsat, altimeter, and integrating all of this with a hydrologic model. In my case, I'm using a model called the Variable Infiltration Capacity Model, which is maintained here at the University of Washington. And you can see here comparing, I mean, this blue line is the modeled outflow from Aswan dam, while the red line is showing the measured outflow from Aswan dam. And you can see the satellite model is able to capture most of the monthly operation of Aswan dam, except for some underestimation here during the after the flooding season from September to November. So in general, the satellite-based modeling from this work, I've shown that it has a good agreement with the measured discharge, and it's able to infer the operation of Aswan dam from space. The second opportunity I want to highlight also is the opportunities that are existing to adapt the Aswan dam operation to the filling and also the operation phase of the Gerd dam. So in this work, I again use the satellite information with these different models, and I'm showing here one of the results, for example, and what I'm showing here is how long it will take for the Aswan dam to recover after the filling of the Gerd. And this actually depends on different factors. One factor which is very important, is the numbers of filling years the Gerd will take to fill. And here this is what I'm showing in the x-axis, different filling scenarios starting from 2 year to 12 year. It might be probably decided already how many years. But what I want to show here is actually how this will impact on the long term the recovery of Aswan dam. And just to emphasize again, what I mean by recovery is how long it will take the Aswan dam to get back to its normal operation after the Gerd being filled. So this is the first factor, is the number of filling years. Another factor, which is if Egypt will follow any adaptive approach in the future. And the adaptive approach I followed here is that Egypt will try to use the water more efficiently in the downstream, especially for irrigation. So the panel in the left is showing that in the case that Egypt will not be following any adaptive approach, which I call the non-adaptive approach, while the right panel is showing the case if Egypt will be using an adaptive approach. And again, the box plot here is showing the variability in the stream flow, which is important because you can see this is the case, for example, when we the case of a very wet year versus a very dry year. And what I want to highlight here is, as expected, as the number of filling years is increasing, then the number of recovery years is getting less, especially if we see, for example, a 7 year of recovery of filling, and Egypt is following an adaptive approach, then in this case, the Aswan dam can immediately recover after 1 year of Gerd operation. So the highlight of this study is that the filling scenario, probably more than 7 years, has less impacts on the Aswan dam operation in the future compared to a fast filling scenarios like 2 or 3 filling scenarios. Another opportunity in operating the Aswan dam is to benefit from the long-term stream flow forecast and using that to improve the Aswan dam operation. And for that, I have used a model called North American multimodal in sample. They are providing a forecasting at a monthly scale for the temperature and precipitation. So I use this data into a hydrologic model to compute the stream flow forecast, and then using that and see how the Aswan dam can benefit from the stream flow forecast at the long-term scale. So what I'm showing here is actually a spatial map showing the value of the stream flow forecast for Aswan dam operation. And just to go through this very quickly, the colors are showing the objective function of the optimization. So the lower, when it's a lower penalty cost or lower objective function, it means that the forecast is not useful. If it's a high, it means that the forecast is useful. The x-axis is showing the month when the forecast is being issued by the model, and the y-axis is showing the lead time of the forecast. So I tested from 1 month lead time up to 12-month lead time. So what we can see here, or conclude from here, that in most of the months the forecast has no value for improving the operation of Aswan dam. However, in the months following the flooding season, the Aswan dam can make use or can benefit from the stream flow forecast. Another thing is actually how long the stream flow forecast can be beneficial for Aswan dam. What I found, it's around 8 months. This is the forecast horizon. Beyond the 8 months, the forecast information is no longer beneficial for the operation of Aswan dam. So again, the forecast value added to Aswan dam operation is more pronounced from in the months after the flooding season, from October through December. Another opportunity is actually the existing of these satellite missions make it available for us to develop a user-ready decision support system, which can lead to more practice-oriented outcomes. And for that, I developed this system, which is entirely based on satellite information, to monitor the reservoir operation of the Nile Basin. It has different tools. One of them is to monitor the reservoir operation, and it's currently operational for the Aswan dam. If you go to the system and click on Aswan dam, you will see every day how much water is coming in, how much water is released as well. Another tool is to monitor the initial impoundment, or the initial filling of the Gerd. And is this tool, if you go there, you also click on the dam and see how much of the lake is being filled. Another tools will be integrated in the future to build a scenario-based assessment tool, or using the forecast adaptive reservoir operation, or the FARO tool inside this model. The other opportunity that I want to share also, that we can also promote the use of these satellite missions and this system like NIBRAS by doing the training and capacity building, especially by engaging more the stakeholders inside the region. And this is something I think I feel it's very important to get the three countries working together and build the capacity. And for that, I did this workshop last year, which is called the Sensing River. It was a 3-day workshop on satellite remote sensing application in water resources management, and it was organized here in the University of Washington. But unfortunately, we did this virtually, and we have people participating from the three countries, from Egypt, from Sudan, and also from Ethiopia, and teaching them different topics related to the remote sensing, satellite remote sensing, the cloud computing, reservoir operation, and all of these topics. But it was a very good experience to have the three countries meeting together and learning about the satellite remote sensing and also the decision support system like the NIBRA Aswan. The last slide I want to share is actually what is the path forward, and I think the science has an important factor in this, but I also believe that the politics are very important. I mean, I'm not involved in the politics, but I'm sure that the hydropolitics of the Nile is very important, and I feel like we need to move forward to what I call a C2C solution. And what does that mean? I mean, to try to turn the conflict into a cooperation and try to foster negotiations. And there are a lot of politicians which are involved in this, including the leaders of the three countries, the mediators like US or USA or the United Nations, the African Union, the ministers of foreign affairs and ministers of water resources. All of this, I think they have to try to work together so we can foster negotiations and also try to reach win-win solutions for the three countries of the Nile River. I think I'll stop here with this, some of the acknowledgement of this work that's funded by the University of Washington, also NASA, some of the fellowships I have received. And if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer that during the panel discussion, or you can also email me. This is my email, so feel free to email me if you have any questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Hisham. Thank you very much. I will come to your part now. Mohammed has to leave because of his teaching assignment. Again, thank you for him for squeezing his schedule. Now we're going to open the floor for questioning, but I will start, Mohammed, with your presentations, which you really have highlighted the potential of Gerd, particularly in terms of bringing the people together by providing more opportunity for flood reduction, sustained flow, and also power generation. But also on the other hand, you also mentioned that particularly during the filling operation, there are some setbacks which we all know. You alter even a small stream, you end up getting an impact. This is a huge river, the largest dam in Africa, has a very consequential impact positively and also relatively negatively to a certain extent. But that impact is very limited, particularly during the first phase of the filling. Now, my question is, you also mentioned that there is a decline in irrigation when it comes to Gerd. But Gerd, what Gerd does is simply brings all those wet season flows and somehow bring it into the dry season and supplement the river with more flows during the dry season, which was not happening before. So I was wondering how Gerd can reduce the amount of irrigation in Sudan, especially if it can bring high flow during the dry season. This is one thing. I know that the recession agriculture will go down, but now what Gerd does is simply it reduces the amount of floods in the wetlands and brings those into the rivers through the dry season flow, which you have now more or less a good amount of flows throughout the year. That's one question. And the second question is, Sudan has been a very starting supporter of the Gerd, which we know that because it provides really a lot of opportunity for a number of things. But recently there are some news that says about 20 million people will be endangered because of this flood. I was wondering, what is the risk of Gerd when it comes to flood, as it's actually mentioned in some of the news outlets. So I will start with this, Mohammed.
Thank you. These are absolutely important questions. So about the first one, perhaps there was a little bit misunderstanding there or miscommunication. So when I said Gerd will result in a decline in irrigated agriculture, that was concerning the initial filling period. And that is during July and August. If there are too low flows during July and August, when all reservoirs in Sudan are empty, then that will result in declines in both irrigation water supply, but also municipal and industrial water supplies. So that's the first question. The other question is, so with reference to the risks of an uncoordinated feeding process of GERD to Sudan. So as we all know, 20 million people of Sudan live along the Nile, and that is for the obvious reason that the river provides services to these people in terms of water supply, electricity, and so on. Uncoordinated filling could result in negative impacts on all these services, which could actually impact the well-being of these people. So that's one dimension of these risks. But also, if we go further and talk about, a little bit, it's probably not concerning the filling in particular, but in the long term, if the operation of GERD and reservoirs is uncoordinated, and we have all seen how close these two reservoirs are to each other. If the reservoir was at a very high level at some point, and then it received very high or unexpected, not previously communicated outflow from GERD, that could result in a dam failure, that could result in dam overtopping. And that is what puts the safety of people directly in danger. But I think through coordination, data exchange, and transparency, I think all these risks can be largely mitigated.
Okay, Mohammed, so just a follow-up. So the flood risks that we hear recently is associated with the release, not with the filling. Is it fair to say that?
I'm not sure which flood risk you're referring to. I
mean, in the news, there are about 20 million people will be endangered with flood associated with GERD without any agreement on.
No, I don't think that can be linked directly to floods or flood risks. That can be related to more of dam safety. And if there is no coordination between two dams that are very close to each other, that could result in dam safety issues.
And which will be associated with the release and operation, not with the filling.
Yeah.
The filling, okay. I want to clear that, yeah. Now I can open floor maybe for Wasenu or Samu, who are my collaborators helping me on this. If you have any questions to Mohammed.
Yeah, Samu.
Okay, go ahead.
Thank you, Mohammed, and thank you all of you for attending this regular Nile talk. My question for Mohammed is, and one clarification is that Rosaire reservoir, the tailwater of reservoir you are talking about is between 15 and 20. The dam itself is located more than 100 kilometers away from Gerd. That's just seeking clarification. The second question is, it is obvious that the filling of Rosaire takes place in September, and July and August, it's always Sudan empties it. So that's when Ethiopia wants to fill the dam. I think it is consistent with what Sudan is always doing. So I don't see any negative impact in terms of filling during that period. And in fact, I remember when I was 5-6 years ago in Ethiopia, this was one of the demands from Sudan, that you contain the filling between August and July and August, because Sudan fills its reservoir in September. So can you comment on that? It's unagreed, and it's also discussed with Sudan a long time ago. Is there any implication on those filling on those days, on those 2 months, as it is consistent with the operation of Rosaire? Thank you. That's my question.
Mohammed?
Thank you very much, Samuel, for these important questions. So yes, so the distance of 15 to 20 kilometers, that's the distance between the Gerd dam body, so that's the concrete structure, to the tail of the reservoir of the reservoir dam. But again, once the water enters the reservoir, that results in an increase in reservoir level. So the distance is still very short. On your comment about the impact on Sudan due to the filling in July and August, I know, and I remember that this has been particularly requested by Sudan, and yes, and I agree that having this filling not happening in September is important for Sudanese reservoirs. But again, there are also endless ways to perform this filling during July and August. You can do it in a week, like what happened last year. You could do it over July and August by guaranteeing certain minimum flows. If you do it over a week, then the flow could decline very, very quickly, very fast, and result in shortages because there's no water stored anywhere in Sudan that can be used to compensate for these flows. So that's what could result in negative impact on Sudan for the supplies during these 2 months. The risk is not on the seasonal filling of the reservoirs, but on water uses during July and August.
One more question.
I have some addition.
Okay, Mohammed has about 5 minutes. Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right. This is just to state that the Gerd should have been negotiation between Sudan and Ethiopia. When you have dams in series this close, you have to have a coordinated plan. And that should have been, this is not something that you can sign into legal agreement, rather because there will be too many variables that you have to switch your operation, do extreme drought, extreme flood, but the operation plan can be developed in coordination if there is cooperation. And definitely, when you have dams in series, there will be impact. So the Aswan dam is so big, it won't be affected very much with one year filling, such as the second year filling. But with the Sudan, it is very necessary to cooperatively develop operation plan. And I think that can only happen if you have cooperation. So that probably is out of question the way things are right now.
Mohammed, you want to comment on this? I mean, that was Wasan's comment on how that is actually related to what you said. Can I say a few words before you go?
Yeah. So yeah, I partly agree with you that there are some issues that are only related to the Rosaris and the Gerd, and there are issues that are related to the wider Nile water management that need to be handled on the Basin level. But that is ultimately, I think, the decision for the politicians to take. And I think breaking the negotiation down could have its also downsides. But yeah, ultimately, that's a political decision.
I agree with you, Mohammed. That's a political decision when it comes to negotiating and also understanding how to somehow coordinate, particularly the series of reservoirs and dams downstream of the Gerd, and how you coordinate the filling and the operations. But I would like to follow up one more question before you go about recession agriculture. Is really a big worry in Sudan that recession agriculture will be impacted because eventually you get more water, or maybe you get the same amount of water as before? The only thing what you have to do is, instead of getting water from the wetlands, you are getting water from the actual river during the dry season. So maybe you need to somehow change how you irrigate your lands, or maybe how to actually manage your irrigation water, but the water will be still there on a long-term basis.
Yeah, so simply the difference here is recession agriculture is free of charge. You don't need to pay anything to irrigate your land. You don't need to buy pumps to pay your lands, to irrigate your lands. And once the river flow changes, there is a wide population that rely on this activity for their livelihoods. And this sudden change is, just going to impact them, who are mostly the poor. And so it's basically moving from a cheap, easy way to sustain their livelihoods to a more expensive way that requires some investment.
Yeah, I agree with you. Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah. So I know, Mohammed, we are getting you in May or so. That's our tentative schedule. So I wouldn't mind now letting you go. And Mohammed will be back sometime in May to give us a talk by his own on a different topic or on a similar topic. So let's say thank you to Mohammed. Thank you very much for coming. He has to go to class in 2 minutes. Thank you, Mohammed. Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you a lot, yeah.
Bye.
Okay, now we can open the floor for, maybe let's let Mekdelawit to join us, and then we can combine the two talks together. Mekdelawit, can you?
Yes, I'm very sorry for the mishap. I think it should be fixed now.
Okay, otherwise you can email it to me and I can run it from here and then you can do that.
Okay, how about now?
Yeah, it works now so far. Okay, it's good.
Thank you, everyone. My name is Mekdelawit, and I'll be talking more about the long-term sustainable and equitable use of the Nile Basin. So, and this is because GERD is the least of our worries when we think about long-term water use in the Nile Basin. Now, even though everybody wants to talk about the GERD, and at the moment the GERD is the hottest topic in the basin, one of the things that GERD has put to the forefront is how utterly unprepared we are as a basin when it comes to long-term future water use. And I say this because of things that I will elaborate later on, but that's what I want to focus on. People will leave. Water is going to be more scarce. So how are we going to use it in the long term sustainably and more importantly, equitably? Now, so there are 3 points in my presentations that I want to stress on. So there's the long-term use, there's the sustainable use, and there's the equitable use. Now, currently we know that the whole of the Nile water is allocated between uses in Egypt and Sudan, but it's not hard to figure out that these upstream countries are also developing, which means more demand for water will come into play. And then this will result in countries feeling the pressure to utilize their water resources, and Nile being one of a shared river. Nile will also be utilized by all of the other upstream countries, which will bring us back to situations like where we are now, like discussions that we're having around GERD. And then with climate change also making water variability unpredictable and essentially hard to manage, it becomes critically important for us to know how to use it equitably and how to use it sustainably in the long term, not just now. So there are a few slides that I want to share just to make my point crystal. Now, so this is a plot of the population growth of the Nile Basin. Now, different lines are different countries, but you don't need to know which line is which. There's an overwhelming trend here. In every country, population is growing up, and it's exponential. So right now, the Nile Basin has around 460 million people, and by 2050, it's expected to double, I think, if I'm not mistaken. This is also another graph, again from the NBI, and it's a plot of electricity access between countries in the Nile Basin. Now, with the exception of Egypt, and this is quite an old data, so it's in 2012, 10 years old. So it might not be as low as this, the numbers might not be as low as this, but the point I want to try to make here is there is a long way to go in terms of fulfilling the basic benefits of the countries, which again will force countries to use their resources aggressively, increasing the fight for water. Now, I want to show the current use of water in different Nile Basin countries and projected water use in this in all of the Nile Basin countries, again, to make my point. So this is municipal water use between of the Nile Basins now, currently, and then with a high projection, so expecting like a lot of water use in 2050 and medium projection in 2050. So as you can see, municipal water use is not so much. So it's right now it stands around 4 billion cubic meters, and it's expected to go to about 10 or 11 BCMs. Still, it's not a lot. Industrial water use is next. Again, it accounts for around 1 billion cubic meters of water use right now. And in the future, by 2050, it's expected to rise to 3 billion cubic meters. It's not a lot. The main water user in the basin right now, and also in the future, is still irrigation. Right now, 83.3, almost 84 billion cubic meters of water, which is almost the totality of the Nile water is used by irrigation. The future demand of the countries is going to be 138.3 billion cubic meters of water. Now, this does not mean that all of this water has to come out of the Nile, because many of these countries also have other opportunities. But the point is, with population growth, increased demand for water, and with climate change scarcity, more countries are going to need to use the Nile. And this number that we see here is nowhere near to what we know what we know to be the flow of the Nile. So it's very, very important that we come up with a mechanism of use which coordinates the use between countries and actually makes the best out of the resources that we have, which is why I really appreciate Hisham's presentation. Our move should be towards adaptation for future circumstances, and not so much in terms of sticking to the status quo and making sure we don't go lower than what we're used to, which is the current water use right now. So bottom line is business as usual scenario is not going to work however way we cut it, and there has to be a way to move forward. There has to be a way to move forward. And the way to move forward was with a basin-wide thinking. We can't keep on developing projects and thinking about the water, just thinking about capitalizing on national resources. There has to be a basin-wide thinking where we can capitalize on the whole resource of the basin as a whole, the whole water as a whole, and considering the basin as an economic unit. And to make my point here, I have some numbers as well. The irrigation potential of the whole of the Nile Basin is estimated to be around 50 million hectares. And half of this is in Sudan. So why not grow the food of the basin in Sudan? Ethiopia has 7.9, around 8 million hectares, and Uganda 7.3. All of the Nile basins have decreasing amount of possible irrigable land. But this shows you that there is more than enough land to feed the Nile Basin and more. Hydropower capacity or energy potential. It's estimated that the potential demands of the Nile Basin will be about 25 gigawatts by 2030. But the hydropower capacity of Ethiopia just in the Blue Nile Basin is 30 gigawatts, 30,000 megawatts. And if we consider the country as a whole, it's 45 megawatts. This is more than enough energy to electrify the whole of the Nile Basin with clean, affordable energy, and even more. It's not just the Nile Basin. So the point I'm trying to make is there is more than enough resource in the basin to feed the country, to feed the whole of the basin, to electrify the whole of the basin, to sustain basic needs in the basin, and go beyond that. But these things can only be done if we have a basin-wide thinking at hand. If we can think about the basin as a whole and move forward to capitalize the resources of the basin collectively. And for this to happen, I have another slide here which shows the potential savings that can be incurred in the basin if the countries work together. So this is just one scenario of saving where countries implemented rain-fed agriculture, increased irrigation, deficit irrigation, and in-country and cross-country regional cropping. And if we implement just these 4 measures in the countries, we would be able to save around 38.72 billion cubic meters of water. That's approximately 40 billion cubic meters of water, which is slightly less than half of the amount of the flow of the Nile that we're thinking about. So I guess my point is there are mechanisms of use where we can make the water more than enough for the whole basin. But for that to happen, there has to be a basin-wide thinking. There has to be collaboration. There has to be thinking. This narrow, one-sided, capitalizing on country efficiency is not going to work. And for this to happen, we have mechanisms. There has to be benefit sharing infrastructures where we can share the benefit of the water. We can learn from basins like the Senegal River Basin and implement co-owned infrastructure. We can think about basin-wide water transfer, physical water transfer. Not all countries need the physical water equally. We have to really think about economic integration and trade of food and water and energy, which in a way is essentially virtual water trade, increasing efficiency, and water savings in the basin. The slide I showed earlier is case in point that by increasing water saving and efficiency, we can have quite an impressive amount of water, extra water in the basin. There has to be water smart investment and synchronized planning on operation, which Mohammed's presentation earlier makes a point for that, for the synchronized planning and operation, as well as Hisham's presentation. As I mentioned earlier, our demand is not keeping up with the amount of water that we have. So we have to explore alternative water resources, groundwater, desalination, wastewater reuse. And also we have to think about the river. I read a report somewhere that because of climate change, the flow of the Nile is supposed to increase by 5%, but 5% is nowhere near to where the demand is growing. So we have to think about the river and environmental conservation and protection so we can have sustained flow for the future as well, not just now. and increasing creation of water conscious citizens who know the value of water and water saving will be part of this. Now, these are scientific/social recommendations, but transboundary water, as my other panelists have also mentioned, is not just about the science. It's the coming together of the technical, the political, the social, and the legal aspect that forms a holistic transboundary water management. So it's really imperative that we approach the transboundary water management from all these aspects. It's not just about the science, it's not just about the law, it's also not just about the politics, but these things have to feed into each other in order to have a sustained, a holistic, a robust game plan going forward for the Nile Basin. And that is why I really suggest, yes, research is good in the basin, but we also have to start working on people-to-people diplomacy, what's called track 3 kind of diplomacy, letting people know what each other's needs are, creating empathy in people. Well, the technical, we're covered in this study, in this panel, because this is a scientific panel, but we also have to frame the mechanism of use, the framework of use, and a legally sound agreement. So the law of the land, when it comes to transboundary water management right now, modern laws are equitable use and the causing of significant harm. These two frameworks need to frame any kind of movement in the basin moving forward. So that's why we have to leave the status quo behind. That's not going to be a possible mechanism for us going forward. Equitable and reasonable use needs to form these foundations. There has to be a significant amount of political will between the countries and trust between the countries in order to move this forward. So we can talk about the CFA, which brings this, the legal mechanism of equitable and reasonable use into play. That there are many capable experts, including the ones presented here, that can come up with technical and scientific methods on how to use the water effectively. And more importantly, I don't want to miss the social, because it's only when the people are on board that we can implement any of the measures that I discussed, that Hisham and everybody discussed earlier. So I really want to stress on the fact that we need to have a holistic approach going forward, and we need, and I seriously mean it when I say Gerd is the least of the problems if we consider the basin as a whole. There are going to be many scenarios like Gerd going forward, because there's no other way. Countries everybody needs to live, and to live we have to capitalize on resources, and then we're back to square one if we don't come up with a mechanism. So this is my main message, but it's not just a hopeless, we have to start from ground zero kind of message. There are already good frameworks to start from. For example, there was the joint multipurpose project study by the Eastern Nile Technical Regional Office, which is a part of the Nile Basin, which thought about multi-purpose projects which could be potentially put forward by the countries together. There was also another Eastern Nile Power Trade study, also by the same institute. These are some things to capitalize on, but they do need a lot of political and social will to capitalize on. We have the CFA as a framework, which puts equitable and reasonable use into the framework. We can think about that, although it's more a political approach. And we really need to capitalize on the momentum of the Gerd to move these things forward. Right now, countries are talking, people are invigorated to talk about transboundary waters, even though it might be a bit tension, but we can capitalize on this moment, on the momentum of the Gerd, and to try to move things forward. But I really want to stress on the fact that the idea should not be to keep the status quo. The idea should not be, even science, like sometimes I'm surprised to see scientific studies using the framework or the kind of use that we have now as a baseline for future studies. If we start from there, then we're doomed, because right now the water use that we have is inequitable and unsustainable. So the idea should not be to keep the status quo, or to not to stray so far from the kind of baseline that we're used to, but to have this kind of adaptive mindset, exactly like the kind of presentation that Hisham had, to formulate mechanisms of adaptive use so that we can go into the future and sustain the basic needs of not just a subset of the Nile Basin countries, but all the Nile Basin countries. That is my presentation, and I'd be more than happy to take on questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mekdelawit. Thanks a lot. So now we have two extraordinary 10 minutes or so presentations by Hisham and Mekdelawit. So Hisham stressed particularly on the operation of hardened Gerd and the impact of Gerd filling, particularly on the sensitivity of recovery years under different adaptive and non-adaptive operations or management. And he has also clearly shown that the adaptive management has a very positive contributions in terms of reducing the number of years for hard to recover. So this is really very important. He has also indicated the applicability of satellites, particularly in monitoring reservoirs, which is really very important. And I'm very happy even to know that Nibras means light, yeah? That Hisham? So hopefully it will bring light into the negotiations and into the discussions and bring the different parties together, which is really very important. And I believe that also this is also an open access, everybody can access it. And it's really very important for people to go and look into Nibras tool, maybe monitor how, HUD is actually, maybe monitor its status, and also hopefully it will be also applied also maybe for Gerd in the future. I don't know, because it's a satellite based, why not? So this is really very important. So we know that now there is always a pen when you are actually altering the natural flow of not river as large as Nile, but also even any streams, but coming together and discussing the positive and the negative impacts and talk about how to actually share the risks and at the same time also the benefits is very, very important. The way things are going nowadays is a little bit scaring me now. I mean, instead of coming together, it looks like maybe a little bit of polarizations. We have to depoliticize Gerd. It doesn't help the people, it doesn't help the region, but there is always a room to sit down together and talk about all of the things. And also Mekdelawit also talks about benefit sharing, about co-owning infrastructures, all about also virtual water use, to talk about the common resource, which is really very important. Maybe the status quo is one of the bottlenecks that now we are having. Egypt and Sudan would like to have maintain that 100% use of the Nile River, but the Nile Basin countries say, okay, we have been not using any of it, so let's talk about what is sustainable, what is equitable, what is reasonable, without doing any significant harm to the lower basin countries. And that is a sticky point. It's not really Gerd, it's not really its filling, it's not really operations. I mean, we do our own best when it comes to science, and I think Gerd doesn't like any technical data. There is a lot of information if we use it really the right way. I think everybody has to do their own share. Politicians have to really do their own share and come together and depoliticize the Gerd and move positively in order to bring the countries together, in order to actually somehow also inspire other countries to do a similar approach for developing their water resource in the region. So there is a lot of opportunity for the countries to come together. Now I'm going to open with that, with one question for Hisham, and then I will also follow up with Mekdelawit. Hisham, the adaptive approach that you indicated, with and without adaptive approach, we really have seen how that actually made a big difference in terms of the recovery of HUD. I was wondering what type of adaptive approach you actually included in this, and is there really an interest on the Egyptian side to consider this in their reservoir operation?
Yeah, thanks, Aswan. So the adaptive approach I followed for, I didn't show that in my slides, but the way I did it is actually using a water stress index. So the way I did that is to stress the water system in the downstream, especially for the irrigation water use in the Nile Delta. And what I mean by stressing is less water supply for the downstream. And this will reflect later in the way Egypt has to use the water coming from Aswan Dam. So they have the option of either using more efficient way of irrigation systems, or maybe putting some restrictions on some of the growing some of the crops, which Egypt actually is taking some action on that, especially with growing of the rice in the Nile Delta. So this is the way I did. I just use a water scarcity or water stress index, and based on that, I changed the operation of Aswan Dam by storing more water maybe on Aswan Dam and release less water to the downstream to the Nile Delta. So this is the adaptation approach I followed in my study. Yeah, I think this is the answer for the question, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the follow-up question is, one of the things that we always say is maybe it's not a very fair baseline scenario or maybe fair assumption is to consider the current herd size and volume as a basis for understanding the impact of GERD on herd. So if you really see that herd is more or less almost twice that of the herd, that of the GERD. So if we are really planning that the GERD size, I mean the herd size is our reference point, any operations that we are trying to do with the objective of filling the herd doesn't have really a fair start. Or in other words, it actually assumes that filling of the herd to its full capacity is the reference point. And then when it comes to water sharing, that completely goes against it, because now the whole discussion about the GERD and the Nile is to change the status quo. There is more water being used in Sudan and Egypt and then zero upstream. If we change that formula, if we change that ratio, then the whole operation thing, simulation that we do, maybe doesn't make any sense. What's your comment on this?
Yeah, I mean, I think I partially agree with you that the way that to maintain the status quo is because the GERD is already, it's a matter of fact, we have to, it's already there. So, and I think most of my studies I was pushing towards the adaptive operation of Aswan Dam and the changing the operation of Aswan Dam itself. I didn't show in the slides, but I have in the study that the Aswan Dam can actually change its operation a little bit, especially during the summer, because the way it's operating now, it's saving the water or the flood that comes in August, and then in September the water is saved, is stored in the Aswan Dam. So I think this is the time, especially during the summer, that Egypt probably can think more about how to change the operation of Aswan Dam. So I think I agree that there should be some flexibility in the operation of Aswan Dam. This is the point that Egypt has to consider, but still, I mean, as I showed also in one of the figures, it's still everything is based it's based also on the upstream, how the upstream will feel, how the upstream will operate. Then Egypt can adapt based on the upstream, how the upstream will manage the operation of the GERD. So I think Egypt has to take some steps, yes, but also we have to coordinate together so Egypt can decide which step we can take, because for now we cannot say how to operate the Aswan Dam unless we know or we have information about how GERD will be filled or will be operated in the future. So that's why I think still the coordination between the three countries, Egypt, Sudan, and Ethiopia, is very important.
Yeah, I agree with you. But unfortunately, the three countries are really abandoning the technical information that the scientific community is providing, and now going away from science and data, and now they wrangle about who can be the member of the mediation or the negotiations, or maybe try to have a group and then maybe somehow manage the whole discussions by simply saying that Egypt and Sudan has a power on this and then no other countries. I think that's going to hurt the whole discussion. I really believe that the coordination and getting it together and taking the science and the data that you guys are providing and use it to their benefit. But the way things are going now, it's really a little bit, I'm very scared a little bit. It takes a long time maybe to come together, and that's not helpful and that's not productive. Now, Wasenu and Samu, if you have any questions.
I have some comment. That is a very excellent work which can be applied to management of the whole basin. And when you have reservoirs in series, when one at the top changes its regulation schedule, in this case, a new regulation schedule is coming up with filling and operation. All the downstream reservoirs have to adjust and develop a new operation plan. But with the GERD, while arguing with different issues, now it is going to have the secondary filling. The new operation plan at the top is being developed, and downstream, nothing has been done because there is no cooperation. So from the filling part, your graph showed very well that 7 to 8 years will have a least impact on HUD. And now the plan almost agreed upon first round up to 49.3 billion cubic meter is 5 years. And then you'll have 2 or 3 years to get it to the maximum level and then start coming down. So it is clear that the existing draft on the filling is not going to have major impact on HUD because it is very large. But the smaller dams upstream, like Rosaries, unless there is coordination, there could be potential problems. So your study is very nice, especially showing that 7 to 8 years filling, which we also proposed in our Gerd book, 7 to 8 years with 20% holding. So just to comment that it is very nice, interesting work.
Okay, Mekdelawit, do you have a comment, you said?
Yeah, I'm getting a lot of comments in the chat about one of the numbers that I presented about projected, not projected, hydropower demands in the basin. So I mentioned that Ethiopia has around 30,000 megawatts of hydropower potential around, and 30,000 in the Blue Nile and 45,000 in the whole of the country. And the projected hydropower plants to be finished by 2025 in the basin is expected to be 25 gigawatts. I want to make the distinction. That's not the projected energy demand for the basin. I just wanted to make that clarification because many comments were coming. Thank you.
Okay, no problem. Yeah. Okay.
Okay. So this is Sam.
Okay, yeah, go ahead, Sam.
Okay, thank you very much, Hisham, for a presentation that has a potential to be applied in the basin wide for monitoring and management of the Nile Basin reservoirs. Indeed, not only the reservoirs, but the whole water use in the basin. My question is a little bit away from this, and there is also a question that I was asked to ask. And we know that the Nile inflow to HUD fluctuates over the last 100 years between 40 and 100 billion meter cube. And there is information, misinformation or information you can say, that a 1 billion meter cube reduction of flow from Nile would have a substantial consequence on the downstream use of Egyptians, 1 billion, whereas the variability itself is more than the Blue Nile flow. So can you comment on that? Where is the source of that? A 1 billion reduction in the flow would affect over 200,000 people in Egypt, and there are this kind of information, whereas we know the flow varies between 40 to 100 billion meter cube. Thank you very much, Hisham.
Thank you, Simo, for your question. To be honest, I haven't heard about this information before, and I was surprised as you if there is like saying 1 kilometer cube will be reduction in the Nile, because already the variability of the flow is already very high. So yeah, I think I do not believe in these numbers. I mean, if they are saying 1 kilometer cube will impact that much amount, I think they might be not. They might. I mean, maybe the number is reported in a different way. Maybe if they're saying 1 kilometer cube, not of the Nile, like maybe they mean like 1 kilometer cube of water. How many people will be impacted if 1 kilometer cube is not delivered? But they do not mean maybe that 1 kilometer cube coming from the Nile or something. That's I might understand in this way better than saying it's from the Nile itself. I would say it might be they mean 1 kilometer cube. Yeah, like how many people will be impacted in Egypt if 1 kilometer cube is not there or something. So maybe, but for the Nile, yeah, I agree with you. I mean, the variability is very high. I mean, we usually report the number like Egypt, the 84 kilometer cube, but if we look at the historical inflow, we might find some years that comes the water coming to Egypt is more than 84 kilometer cube. So so I agree with you. I'm not sure about this number.
Okay, yeah, completely. I think that was on the news for some time, and I also received that link, and we were actually puzzled where this number is coming from. That's what we have reservoirs we have had, which is really huge. That can even damp not only that 1 BCM, but also more than that. So the variability, as you said, is high, and then we have dams that actually manage and somehow flattens all the fluctuations. Yeah, so those numbers are not very helpful when they are thrown into the public. We need to be very careful. We don't do that as a scientist and as engineers. So, but I don't know where it's coming from. I think it was from an embassy website. Yeah. Okay. Any other questions? If not, I'm going to go to Mekdelawit. Mekdelawit, I have a question for you. I know you stressed a lot, particularly on coming together or how to really somehow understand the issue by talking about benefit sharing or virtual watering approach or coning infrastructures, so many other ways, which is really very, very important. From your research, which you really have done also your master's along that area, and also you are doing some research for your PhD, how much viable is this approach now? I mean, are we ready, are the countries ready really to go along that line and maybe come out of this problem?
That's a fair question, Professor. For the first question, how viable are these options? They are as viable as we are willing. That's what I would say. But it's important because we have to consider the socioeconomic, technical, monetary, and also political circumstances in the basin when we suggest these recommendations per se. Not everything can be handled now, can be implemented now. So that's why it's important to make a strategy, a game plan. What can be useful and applicable in the basin in the short term? What can we do in the middle term and then in the long term? So these things, the recommendations that I suggested earlier, these are the things that I see that the basin has to implement going forward if we want to use it sustainably, but it does not mean all of those recommendations have to be done now. Take the Senegal River Basin. It was their organization was developed in the 1970s. They had practice, so around 30-40 years of practice to reach to where we are now. We also in the Nile Basin also have practices and experience that we can build upon, but it doesn't mean that all of the recommendations have to be done now. They're time sensitive, they're economic sensitive. Not everything can be handled now with the economic, political integration and economic integration that we have now. So my idea, especially in my presentation, in my PhD study, is to come up with a game plan, a short-term, a medium-term, and a long-term plan of what to do in the basin, depending on where we see now, or where we see the basin to be. So scenarios come into play. How much economic integration, how much political integration would we expect in the future, and what those will allow. As I mentioned, it's not just about the science, it's not just about the technicalities. The political will, the social integration, and also our economic capacity has a lot to contribute in terms of what kind of recommendations that we can suggest. So definitely recommendations to consider. They are time sensitive, so not, as I said, not everything has to happen now. It can be also be in the long term, but they are all viable for the Nile Basin, but they are viable as depending on our willingness to implement them, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, I can see the nervousness of Egypt and Sudan because of Gerd, but also Ethiopia has also a reason for really building that dam. It's mainly power or energy security. We talk about 65 million people, and that number will actually grow unless we intervene. But also, if Sudan and Egypt actually has shown less interest in terms of coming together, I was wondering what Ethiopia has done in terms of proposing an alternative approach, the type of approach that you mentioned. Okay, let me do power, let Sudan do irrigation, and then that might maybe somehow handle the issue. I mean, is there any proposal on the Ethiopian side when it comes to somehow approaching this whole issue differently than it has been handled now?
I mean, I can only comment on this from my readings and from from my readings that I've done so far. And I think the GERD was supposed to be one such project where these three countries were supposed to come together and do it. And then it was sort of frustration from that process, which took quite a long time, not coming into fruition, that the GERD came into form in the current shape and form that it has now. But I suppose the power trade studies in the Eastern Nile Basin, the joint multi-purpose project in the Eastern Nile Basin, these were attempts at some of the recommendations that I mentioned, because at the heart of them, it does understand that the physical water sharing between the countries is a dead end and it's not the way forward. And that is why I think, I really do believe that at least in the scientific community, there is this understanding that if we want to move collectively, we have to do it together. And that's why we see these studies. And the Eastern Nile Technical Regional Office, Ethiopia, Sudan, Egypt, and South Sudan as well now. Many studies that are done in that institute are geared towards this kind of approach. So I think that would be a good exemplification of the political will to move in this direction. But I can't say with authority that Ethiopia did this, Sudan did this.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other questions from the audience through Wasanu and Samu? Wasanu, any questions you see over there, or Samu?
I just want to supplement Mekdelawit. Thank you, Mekdelawit, for showing us a broad perspective that has been rolling also in the scientific community. I think the baseline to start is that there's always any kind of cooperation, whether it's benefit sharing, whether it's water allocation, any kind of cooperation is by far better than the current status quo of conflict. This has to be the baseline to start with negotiation. And there is already a capital, human capital built through NBI, through intro-all, and multilateral negotiations in the over the last 20, 30 years. For example, we have like 900 to 1,000 people that are trained through NBI that are partly in the negotiation now. They can talk to each other. And this NBI has changed the landscape of Nile Basin from confrontation to cooperation. There was a very dynamic change in the Nile Basin. There was a peaceful condition in the Nile Basin. Therefore, I think what Mekdelawit put, any kind of cooperation, whether it's benefit, whether water allocation, is by far better than the current status quo of conflict. And it also sets the public in a different mindset, in a cooperative mindset. Once we set in that background, then we know that Nile Basin countries has, if there is cooperation, there is unparalleled economic development would usher in the region. So that's where we have to see not only the water part, but the enormous economic opportunities that should come due to cooperation over the coming 30, 40 years. As you know, as Mekdelawit also show, the growth of population and climate change uncertainty, and all these ushers and urges cooperation in the Nile Basin. And it is not an option in the highly water scarce Nile Basin, but it is a must for cooperation to be initiated and to be implemented. And for this, there are many senior Nile Basin staff. There are a lot of international communities, experts that has been involved. And there has to start a new way of water diplomacy, a kind of diplomacy that sets in a different course than putting ourselves only in the box of Gerd. That's my comment. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? So, okay, what's up?
I think what we forget is that as every day there is some obstruction going on in the Nile Basin countries. As the population grows, there will be obstruction, irrigation withdrawals, and small dams. There are streams that are drying up. So these arguments can continue that it is Egypt and Sudan's share should be maintained. But in reality, every day the withdrawal in the upper countries is going on. So it is very hard to maintain the status quo with this kind of distributed water abstraction in the upstream countries. We might discuss a lot on Gerd, but the flow will be constantly decreasing anyway. So that we have to realize that the status quo cannot be even maintained without even doing nothing in terms of negotiation.
Yeah, I agree with Sanu. Yeah, even though we don't have any water sharing agreement at this point, it is happening. People are obstructing. Countries are actually using, not only because they really want, but they have to in some cases. Farmers really are in need of producing more food to meet the food demand. And I see a lot of small-scale irrigations as I travel in the Blue Nile Basin, and that's going to continue in the future. So that leads to a question to Hisham. I was wondering if your simulation can include some kind of abstractions upstream on top of the Gerd and see what the simulation would look like. I was wondering, have you done that?
So I haven't taken into consideration some of the abstraction. I mean, we can do that in the model, but in the study that I've shown, we haven't considered different scenarios for the irrigation abstraction in the upstream. But I'm currently working in the model to try to include more of the irrigation in the upstream, especially in Sudan, and also if there is irrigation in Ethiopia, and see how this, like, to include more scenarios for the impact on the downstream.
Yeah, exactly. I think those things are really very, very important. It is going to happen. I wish it happens with the understanding of every basin countries. We ratify the CFEA and come together and share the risk and share the water, and then go from there. Otherwise, I personally feel that as we wait longer, there is more complexity to the whole negotiations, and even, you know, how can we even deal with the water sharing question that we have? Currently, on the table is water sharing equitably, reasonably, without significant harm. But that is going to actually somehow invalidate the status quo and the historical use, which Egypt and Sudan are still not ready to come out of this. Any other questions for Mekdelawit and Hisham? A comment?
I just want to say also, I second what Simo said about the long-term cooperation between the three countries, and also what highlighted by Mekdelawit about having a sustainable and equitable future for the Nile. That I think especially we need to think more, not only about the Gerd, we need to have like a framework for the entire basin for the other dams as well. I mean, I showed the map for the planned dams in the future. So we should also, when we think about the framework, we should think about the future, not only the Gerd, but also other hydropower dams that come into the basin. So we should consider all of this also for the future, no? Because I feel like now we all only talk about the Gerd, but I think we need to think more wide about the entire basin.
That's true. That's true. Well, the Nile water may not be that significantly enough to meet demand, especially in the future. As we grow, the demand is going to grow. If we don't actually somehow invest a lot on smart agriculture, on technologies that saves us water, or maybe somehow use different approaches, we will be suffering from the limited resource that's being tapped by so many countries, and so many people need to actually tap on that one. And one of them is interbasin transfer. There are some proposals to transfer water from other basins, which I heard about from Congo River, from others, and all of that. I think we have to have that holistic approach, not only Gerd, not only Nile, but also beyond that. But there has to be a level of understanding at all levels that people have to sit down together, not antagonize, but there are rooms to talk about, there are rooms to really reach an agreement, but only if there is some genuine interest to talk about the challenge. There is no huge benefits that everybody will get out of this, but there is a challenge. But through discussions, you can somehow address that challenge and come together and share the common scarce resource. I think that's really very important thing. Any other comment and question?
Are we going to get the chance, or it's just among hosts that can ask questions?
Usually, thank you, Dr. Lema. The plan was through the host and I mean through the moderator, but I'll give you a few minutes if you want to throw one question.
Oh, okay. Thanks very much. I was confused because being audience, or can we ask a question? And thanks for the chance. I have one question for Hisham, one comment for Mekdelawit, and a small comment for Sammu, based on Sammu's comment. The question to Hisham, actually, you raised it, the first question you raised, and that is about the non-adaptive and adaptive methods that he considered. My question or request is to elaborate on the specifics of the adaptive measures that you considered. The reason I ask for elaboration is there are similar studies done by others. They are not as conclusive as your result shows. And because of the way the result is attractive, at least to me, in showing the gains and the balance, it would be very informative. And I would also ask that your elaboration be included on the slides as footnote or not before posting the recordings so we can benefit from it. My comment to Mekdelawit is that she repeatedly uses the concept of holistic, considering political, not only scientific. I would like to suggest for her to consider the terminology multidisciplinary approach. This is a term very well used in water resource systems engineering, which is a multidisciplinary approach where you take technical, economic, and others as much as possible, and that could be useful in her consideration. The thing about it slipped my mind, so I will skip that.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Lema, for your comments. These are comments, unless Hisham and Mekdelawit want to respond. Hisham, you want to go?
Yeah, I mean, thanks Lema for the comment. Yeah, I'm sorry that I didn't elaborate that much about the adaptive versus non-adaptive approach in my slides, but I think that we were supposed to have like just 10 minutes for the presentation, so I just want to make it very quick. And I refer actually to the paper. So we have this paper in the Journal of Hydrology published last year, and we have more details about how we consider the adaptive and non-adaptive approach in our work. And I can share it with you after the panel discussion as well. Thank you again.
Okay, thank you very much, Mekdelawit. Instead of holistic, multidisciplinary approach.
I completely agree. Yes, I actually make the case for a multidisciplinary study when approaching transboundary. That's a very good point.
Okay, okay. Any other questions from the audience? Any comment?
Yeah, can I go forward?
Yes, please, yeah.
You know, I just, want to thank the organizers and also the presenters. And the very important point that Mekdelawit said is the people-to-people diplomacy. I think this forum also with Hisham and Mohammed, Basheer, and all of us, coming here is a people-to-people diplomacy, in my opinion. The professionals, who are thinking about the benefits for the people should go more into the people-to-people diplomacy and informing their own people for the benefit of projects like Gerd. It's not only Gerd, but what Mekdelawit also brought. And I would like to thank Kevin also for helping me to have contact with Sudanese professionals to start this kind of approach, understanding between the professionals and convey it to the people so that to somehow influence the decision makers also. This is just a thank you comment from my side.
Okay, thank you very much, Abata. Thank you, Abata. Thanks a lot. Any other comments, questions?
Yes, hello.
What I was going to comment to Sammu, if I get a chance, I'll come back.
Okay, let's go first to Mohammed. You wanna go?
Yes, hello, everybody. Good morning, according to Ghana time. So I listened most of the comments and presentations, but we find the idea usually talking about the benefits and cooperation between the country and using the benefits of according to your describe from the dam. But I would like to receive these is the same questions from the previous meeting. Is what is a risk analysis if something happened in the dam? And as we engineering and scientists, there is no any single project has 100% safety anywhere in the world. Okay, so what is a risk analysis? How Ethiopia can help Sudan and Egypt if something happened in the dam with a 74 billion cubic meter flood from the dam down to downstream, how they can protect those people. I have a very rough calculations about the effect of this, the power or the energy of this water all over downstream from the 74 billion, in addition to the other dams in Sudan. This water may be added to the, it will be added to the Nasser Lake, and the probability of the high dam to can handle this wave, it's very high, because the mass flow will be 3 times or 4 times the mass flow or the water flow in the highest time of the flow in the year. So how can protect more than 120 million people living on the Nile River in the Sudan and Egypt if something happened in the dam?
Okay, thank you, Mohammed. Thank you very much. Anybody wants to respond to this? I can
address this. Yeah, there are a lot of dams all over the world. Thousands of dams upstream of cities and many kinds of environment. So all you have to do is design, review, and quality control of the construction of the dams. That is a guarantee for downstream dwellers. And then the downstream dwellers, the way we do here is there has to be emergency management plan in case the dam fails, what they are going to do. I think that is the standard. That has to be combined with the responsibility of operation of the dam by the dam owner. The operation plan has to be, information has to be passed down, and if there is some emergency, that information has to be transmitted on timely manner. Otherwise, we can't go around the world and ask dam owners what's the risk going to be down on downstream dwellers. So pretty much it is not the first case the dam is built.
Okay, thank you very much, Hussein. And then Mohammed, for your reference, there was a talk, I believe the second or the third webinar was on dam safety. So I believe that webinar is already recorded and is on the website of the Nile Forum Talk. You can refer to that. And also, if I remember, at least someone told me that a Sudanese official, or maybe the Ministry of Water, said that Gerd is more safer than Had. So maybe that will summarize it here. Any other response to this?
Yeah, I would also like to add to this. While it's a very valid question to ask what would happen should the dam fail, it's also important to note that dam failure is not an event that's like as often as was stated in the question. You know, this is a roller compact concrete dam, which is with the utmost security and you know, top of the top-notch science. I lost my train of thought. But it's important to note that this dam is being built with care and safety. And the first people to suffer should the dam fail are the Ethiopian people, because this is the dam that people are building with blood and sweat, literally. So to think that such a huge dam would fail just like that or because of random phenomena, I think it's quite unrealistic. But it's also important to note that dam failures are not a common event, and should, in that slight probability that the dam should fail, then the comments mentioned by Dr. Wasan come into play. There's always an emergency plan in place. But I think it's blowing the issue out of proportion to talk about what would happen to millions of people downstream if the dam fails, because that probability is very low, and it's important to have trust between the countries and trust in the country that's actually building the dam, that the dam is being built with the utmost care and safety as well.
Okay, Professor Damto.
Thank you for the opportunity, Chair, and the organizers appreciate that. Actually, I appreciate very much Dr. Asafa for this continued contribution toward this very important conversation. In fact, this is simply to reiterate what you just said, but confirm that the Sudanese Minister of Water stated very clearly that this dam is much more robust and safer than the two dams in Egypt and the Sudan. I'm really surprised that why this even becomes a question when none of these issues have been a discussion or a conversation in the past. So I just want to leave it as that. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you very much, Professor Damto. I can go to Dia Eldin. You have a question?
I'm mute. Okay, good morning and salute to all young and older experts speaking about this such an important issue. I'm a professor at the University of Maryland Eastern Shore. I'm not hydrologist, I'm not engineer, but I'm a scientist and I understand the material, and I've been volunteering with other Sudanese to organize also webinars to enlighten the Sudanese public how safe is the Gerd and how beneficial is the Gerd to the Sudan. And we have been following all the development. And really, there is a serious issue of disconnect between politicians and scientists or engineers. And now you see all this data and all this material and all this scientific thing. And there is a lot of scientists in Sudan and engineers who worked on this, and they talked about the benefits and about the safety. But now the issue is in the hands of the politicians who are negotiating once on some issues regarding the drought years, and now the topic started to shift about the safety. And with just ignorance completely of all the previous information that was delivered to previous maybe politicians, that has changed actually now. And so the situation is serious, and as I heard, there should be some more of this kind of webinars that will bring politicians and engineers together and scientists together. And we need more intensive of this. Just saluting you guys and thank you for this great information. And I hope more about the issues about the safety should come, because even if you think about the tiniest chances of danger or risk, it still is very scary. And you know, with the conspiracy theory with social media, always there is a chance for all the flare-up of the negative information. And more intensive public enlightenment should happen as was going on with this webinar. Again, salute to everybody. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor. I agree with you completely. This is what's happening now. And this forum is actually a type of forum that actually advocates and practices the talking points you just mentioned. We would like to bring everyone from Sudan, from Egypt, from Ethiopia, from all over the world that can add knowledge to the whole transboundary water management, including Nile. So we advocate science and facts and data that actually help our politicians to do an informed decisions. That is the most important thing. But politicians are sometimes trying to go away from all these facts and politicize the whole Nile issue. That is not helping. It's not sustainable. It is going to actually bite all of us in the future. It is time now to come together and talk about science and do what's best for the people of the basin. This is really very, very important thing to do.
Yeah, just have
Mohammed has raised his hand.
So yeah, just according to the reply of my questions, there is 2 points. The first point, there is a dam a few years ago. It's already built in Ethiopia, between Ethiopia and Kenya, and it's cracked and fall down, I think so. And there is a flood happening here. It's clearly, it was a small dam, but this is what's happening. The other point is when I mentioned about the engineering and the science and the probability of the failure of any project, there is a probability of that. So we cannot ignore that. And every year there is a dam there is a dam problems having all over the world. Okay, in China, in the US, in different places. So that we cannot ignore and say, okay, the dam is very safe and it's okay, and the probability of the dam failure is very low, and this is tough. We have to put this on our table. And the other point is the emergency plan. Okay, there is no any emergency plan clear now. Okay, and I challenge any country all over the world and the power of all countries in the world, what is the emergency plan can evacuate or protect 120 million people on the Nile. Okay, in a few weeks away from the area to protect them. Okay, no plan in the earth, in the planet can do that. So that not Ethiopia, not Egypt, US, any plan, no country, any power can do that. So this is what I mean. Okay, but when I see last sentence. Okay, when I heard, okay, we have to trust there no trust in engineering. Okay, it's a science and no trust in the life. I cannot trust anybody on my life. So, and this is the life of the two countries. That's what I mean. Okay, so that we need to take care more about when you're talking about the emergency plan and the risk of the dam. And there is a risk. We have to admit that there is a lot of paper talking about the risk. Thank you.
Any construction in engineering, as you know, have risks. Actually, thank you very much, Mohammed. Mohammed has been a very consistent attendant of our forums and conferences, and he always asks questions about dam safety, and we always give answers for that. And he raised it again. Yes, any engineering structures has risks, but those risks are actually very minimal, and it is being addressed. This is a $5 billion project. It's one of the largest in Africa, which has actually proven to be really highly meets the engineering demand that every dam has to meet. It has been confirmed. So I don't think that you need to worry about that, Mohammed. And it has been said by so many people. It has been said by so many officials and also by professionals. So yes, he has been asking these questions, and we try to provide answer every time these questions come. Any other comments on this?
Yeah, just to mention that the emergency management plans are there for, at least in the United States where I work, we have an emergency plan for earth dam failure, which we have Gerd size, but shallow dam. So that is the responsibility, and how to do it, other countries' experiences has to be used. So there are dams all over the world, and use the template from those places. So you have dams upstream of cities. So just, I think that discussion has been politicized, the dam safety issue shouldn't be, the Gerd shouldn't be seen any different than any other modern dam.
Okay, thank you, Wasil. Any, Dr. Lemma, you want to say one comment you said for Sabu?
I had one following Dr. Samu's comment on the need for cooperation and how it's important, and also the need for the NBI, Nile Basin Initiative, to come in. What I wanted to point out is that the Nile Basin Initiative, most of you, including some, I would assume, are aware the Nile Basin Initiative is no more functional. Because Egypt withdrew its contribution and participation, and the others after its term, according to the CFA, if they were to approve the CFA, the next framework, institutional framework would take place. But that didn't happen. And so while we recognize the value of cooperation and the need, and maybe mentioning it is useful in that sense, but we also have to recognize the organized approach, even where international organizations such as the World Bank were involved actively supporting in the funding and whatnot, has been stopped. If there are ways we can reignite that, it may be useful to discuss it, but just making a mention of it alone is not going to be useful and productive for us.
Okay, thank you very much. Unless there is any other comment and questions, I think.
Yeah, can I react on this?
Oh, yeah, okay, go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's very important to mention because if there was a cooperation 40 years ago or 50 years ago where the total population of the Nile is close to 80 million, then today there would have been, the region would have changed a lot. So as population increase, it would stick to 1 billion by 2050. And climate change uncertainty is also coming in. So I think the dimension of cooperation, negotiation will also, the complexity of dimension will increase. Therefore, we have to also, as Dr. Osanu say, people will not sit. I mean, in Ethiopia, people would go into 200 million by 2050, and farmers have already started using. We are putting this cooperation forward, not only for Ethiopia, for a region that a different regime is coming, so that Egypt, Sudan, and others should realize that cooperation at this time is better than cooperation 10 years from now on. So we have to, I mean, for the sake of the people, for the sake of the region, I think we have to talk about bringing cooperation and cooperation together. There is no other option than cooperation. The second thing I would like to add is on Mohammed's safety. You know, the Three Gorges Dam in China, when we see the hydrodynamic, the design of the hydrodynamic for that big dam, which produces close to 20 million megawatt, the design, the flood design is close to 1,000 to 500. And this dam is designed to accommodate a probable maximum flood. That is, in terms of year, it means it is a flood that might come more than 60 to 1 million years. So it is designed to withstand that. At the second time, this is a smart dam that has different spillway at different level. I haven't seen many dams that is as smart as Gerd with different emergency spillways that considers the downstream. I think it is fair to say there are a lot of smart accommodations, and the contractor has constructed more than 200 dams already in the world. Oh, of course, we have, in the United States, we have more than 80,000 dams. In China, we have 60,000 dams. There are a lot of dams in the world, and the probability of failure, of course, there is a risk. But with all this in hand, I think there is a chance that this dam is by far safer than many of the world's dams. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I think I would like to thank the three panel members, extraordinary presentations, and also participating in the discussions in the Q&A. I would like to thank Mohammed, Mekdelawit, and also Hisham for waking up before 5 a.m. in the morning and then being part of the